Hello, everyone. It's Mr. Kissinger, and I'm a third grade teacher at the Syracuse Academy of Science and Citizenship in Syracuse, New York. Today, we're going to be continuing on our unit on length. And today, we're going to actually compare lengths. When we compare lengths is when we take two objects and we get the length of each one of them, and then we're going to find out how much longer one item is or one object is than another. So let's look at the top of our page right here. We have Layla found this spoon and this fork in her tea set. Measure each object in centimeters, and we're going to find which object is longer. So we don't have a centimeter ruler handy, but on our next page, it will show us how long each one of those utensils is. So what is the difference between the length of the spoon and the length of the fork? So we can see based on our diagram here that the fork is 10 centimeters long and our spoon is 8 centimeters long. So we just take the end of the fork, we come right down, we see that that's 10. The end of the spoon, we can follow that right down to the 8. So the fork is 10 centimeters long, and the spoon is 8 centimeters long. The fork is therefore, if you look, you can take 2 jumps to get from 8 to 10. The fork is 2 centimeters longer than the spoon. We could also say it a different way. We could say that the spoon is 2 centimeters shorter than the fork. So I want you to think about this one. So Zuri and Marco want to find the difference in their heights. Explain how they could do this. So why don't you take a minute and think about that. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause. And then we will kind of go over the answer to that. So let's say we have Zuri and Marco. They both measure their height. If we find the height of one of them, and then we find the height of the other, then we can take the one who is taller, the one with a greater height, and we can subtract the height of the shorter person. So if we do that, we can find the difference between the two heights. Difference in mathematics always is going to indicate that we want to use subtraction. So we're going to subtract the shorter height from the taller height. We'll get a little bit more into that on the next page, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. So read the problem, then you will explore ways to find the difference between lengths. Again, when we see the word difference, always remember that means subtract. So we're always going to subtract when we see difference. We just got to figure out which number we need to subtract from which other number. It says Nate and Jen each have a piece of tape. Who has the longer piece of tape and how much longer is it? So we have a couple of handy centimeter rulers down here to show us how long each piece of tape is. It looks like Nate's piece of tape, this one here, is 8 centimeters. Jen's piece of tape is 3 centimeters. One way that we could look at it is we can make what's called a bar model. And that looks like this right down here. So we see the length of Nate's tape here, and then the length of Jen's tape. The difference is this area right here between the end of Jen's tape and the end of Nate's tape. So we can measure that area and we can find the difference. So it makes it a little bit bigger on this next page here. It says, what is the length of each person's piece of tape? Write the numbers into the bar model. So if we were going to write the numbers into here, the length of Nate's tape, we remember, was 8 centimeters. The length of Jen's tape is 3 centimeters. So this area right here is going to be our difference. So who had the longer piece of tape, and how do we know? So think about that for a second. Who has the longer piece of tape? Is it Nate's piece of tape up here, or Jen's piece of tape down here? Right, Nate has the longer piece of tape. So how can we write an equation that you can use to find the difference in length? And then we're going to find the difference. So what equation can we put together to find this area right here? What number will we subtract from what number? Because remember, we're trying to find a difference. When we're finding a difference, we know we're going to use subtraction. Which one would we subtract from which? Well, look at Nate's tape. We know this is the bigger piece of tape. Can we subtract something bigger from something smaller? No, we can't, right? So we have to subtract the smaller number from the bigger number. So we're going to subtract the length of Jen's tape in centimeters from the length of Nate's tape in centimeters. So if we know that Nate's tape was 8 centimeters and Jen's was 3, 8 centimeters minus 3 centimeters equals our unknown, our difference. So what is 8 centimeters minus 3 centimeters? What is 8 minus 3 in centimeters? Right, it's 5. So if we have 8 and we take away 3, 1, 2, 3, we have 5 left, 5 centimeters. So the difference between the length of Jen's tape and the length of Nate's tape is 5 centimeters. So if we were going to complete this sentence down here to compare Nate's and Jen's tape, we would say that Nate's tape is 5 centimeters longer than Jen's tape. So this one's another measure one here. Let's skip right down to this one because we don't need a ruler for this one. So this one says, read the problem, then you'll explore ways to compare length. How much shorter in inches is the eraser than the crayon? So now we're working with inches instead of centimeters, but our process will be exactly the same. At the end, we'll just label it inches instead of centimeters. So you can measure each object and then find the difference. So we see that our crayon is 5 inches long. Our eraser is 2 inches long. That's one way to find our difference is we could subtract 2 from 5 and we could find our difference. Another way that we could measure our difference is we can measure the length from the end of the eraser to the end of the crayon. If we line up these two ends so that they're right at the same spot, we can measure this length. Again, if this is our bar, if we made out one of those bar charts or bar diagrams, this part would be our part with the question mark in it. We can measure that distance and we can find out that that's 3 inches that way as well. Now, if you look at number 11 here, it says, Kelly says you cannot always use the method shown in the second measure it. Do you agree? Why or why not? So let's look at our second measure up here, where we have the crayon and the eraser lined right up, and we're measuring the difference. Now, do you think that there's some instances where we would be measuring objects where we couldn't use this method, where we couldn't use this way of measuring? So think about that for a second. If you can think of a time when we would not be able to use that. So I think Kelly is right in saying that we cannot always use the method shown in the second measure it there, where we line the two objects up. We can't always line the two objects up right next to each other. Let's say we wanted to find the difference between the height of the Empire State Building, the height of the Eiffel Tower. So we couldn't go to France and go grab the Eiffel Tower and bring it here, and then go get the Empire State Building from New York City and bring it here and put them next to each other and go up with a ruler and measure our difference. But if we had the lengths, the heights of both of those buildings, we could subtract one from the other and we could still find our difference. So we can't always line two objects right up next to each other and actually measure the difference. And that's why we prefer to use the method where we subtract one length or one height from another to find the difference, because we can always use that. So we're going to end right there. Just I think the major takeaway we want to get from this lesson is that when we see difference, it means we want to subtract, and that doesn't change when it comes to length. You know, when we're measuring lengths, we take the longer length or the greater length, and we're going to subtract the shorter length from it, and then we'll find our difference. So that'll be it for today. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day and have a good long weekend. And we will see you when you come back.